You're standing in line and the total comes to $27.43. You tap your card without thinking. You've done this every single day this week and you can't remember a single thing you bought. That's the feeling, not the big financial mistakes you replay at 3 a.m., not the car you couldn't afford or the credit card you maxed out. It's the Tuesday afternoon purchase you've already forgotten by Wednesday morning. You know the one. Actually, you know dozens of them. They blur together into a comfortable haze of small yeses that somehow add up to the reason you're still checking your account balance before buying groceries. Here's what that looks like in practice. You woke up tired, so you grabbed the large coffee instead of making it at home. $11. Then lunch happened because you forgot to prep, and the line at Chipotle moved fast. $18. Then you needed a phone charger because yours broke and this one was right there at the checkout. $15. None of these felt like decisions. They felt like necessities, like life happening to you. And tomorrow you'll do it again, not because you're reckless, because you've built a life where $30 a day feels invisible, where convenience isn't a luxury anymore, it's just how you move through the world. You've normalized spending more on things you don't remember than your grandparents spent on groceries for a week. But let's stay with you for a second, because this isn't about one day. You've been doing this for how long now? 2 years? 3? You don't even know because you stopped tracking when tracking started to feel like punishment. And during that time, you've had this running conversation with yourself about getting serious, about finally building that emergency fund, about investing, about doing literally anything that your future self will thank you for. Except every day you wake up and vote against your future self, $27 at a time. You've opened the investment app 4 times in the last 6 months. You've read articles about compound interest. You've calculated what you'd have if you'd started 5 years ago, and then immediately closed the calculator because the number made you feel sick. You know what you should do. You've known for years. But between knowing and doing is this vast ocean of daily decisions that all feel too small to matter. So you keep telling yourself the same story. It's just coffee. It's just lunch. It's just this one thing. And technically you're right. Each purchase in isolation is defensible, reasonable. The math on any single day doesn't look scary, but you're not living a single day. You're living thousands of them, and the math on thousands of days is the reason you're still here, still broke, still promising yourself that next month will be different. The interesting thing is you probably make decent money, maybe even good money. This isn't about income. You know, people who make half what you do, who somehow have savings, who bought houses, who seem to have figured out something you're missing. And when you think about them, you feel this weird mix of confusion and shame because you can't identify the exact moment where your money disappears. It just goes. You've tried budgeting, downloaded the apps, set up the categories, felt optimistic for about 11 days. Then something happened, a birthday, a rough week, a friend visiting from out of town. And the budget became this accusatory thing that made you feel poor and restricted. So you stopped opening it. Because the problem isn't that you don't have a budget. The problem is that living inside a budget feels like punishment for a crime you don't remember committing. Here's what really happening, and nobody wants to say this part out loud. You've been taught that the enemy of wealth is big, stupid purchases, the boat you don't need, the car you can't afford, the vacation on credit. And sure, those things matter. But they're not what's keeping you broke. What's keeping you broke is that you've spent the last 1,000 days choosing comfort over compound interest, choosing convenience over your future, choosing the path of least resistance while telling yourself it's not a real choice because the amounts are small. But here's what nobody tells you about money, and this is where everything you think you know starts to crack. The wealthy don't have some supernatural discipline you lack. They haven't figured out how to care about their future more than you care about yours. What they figured out is that money isn't actually about math, like it's about identity. You're not bad at saving. You're excellent at being the person who values immediate comfort. You're not failing at building wealth. You're succeeding at being someone who makes friction disappear from their daily life. The problem isn't your budget or your discipline or your knowledge. The problem is you've built an identity around being someone who doesn't want to feel the weight of small decisions. And that identity costs exactly $27 a day. Think about the last time you actually felt wealthy. Not rich, wealthy. That feeling of having enough that you stop thinking about it. For most people, that moment was probably in college, living on nothing, eating ramen, but somehow you felt richer then than you do now, making 10 times more. Want to know why? Because back then, your lifestyle and your income were aligned. You weren't spending money you hadn't earned yet. You weren't financing comfort. You were just living within yourself. Now you make more, but you feel broker because you let your identity expand to fill your income, then expand past it. You became someone who doesn't have time to make coffee, someone who deserves lunch out after a hard morning, someone who needs the convenient option because you're busy building a life. Except what you're actually building is a treadmill that requires $27 a day just to keep running in place. The people who actually build wealth do something that looks insane from the outside. They keep their identity small while their income grows. They make $100,000 and still feel weird about a $40 restaurant meal. They have money for a new car, but they keep driving the old one. And from your perspective, it looks like deprivation. Like they're missing the point of making money, but they're not depriving themselves. They're protecting themselves from the most expensive thing you can buy, a lifestyle that requires constant feeding. Here's a specific example that'll make this clear. There's a couple who retired at 41, not because they had some massive income or hit it big on crypto. They were both teachers, combined income around $110,000. And here's what they did that you're not doing. They decided that their identity was people who live on $55,000 even as their income grew. Every raise didn't become a lifestyle upgrade. It became a gap, a space between what they earned and what they needed. And they protected that gap like their life depended on it, because it did. They still went out, still took vacations, still lived. But here's the thing, they understood that you don't. Every time they chose the cheaper option, they weren't sacrificing. They were buying time. The $12 lunch out versus the $4 packed lunch wasn't $8. It was $8 compounded over 30 years. It was a day of freedom. It was a small piece of not having to work until they were 65. Meanwhile, you're doing the opposite math. You're trading freedom you haven't earned yet for comfort you won't remember. Every $27 day is a choice to work longer, to need more, to stay locked in. And the truly brutal part is you don't feel like you're choosing it. It just feels like life. But what happens next is the part most people miss, because it's not just about the money going out. It's about what that pattern of spending is preventing from happening. You can't build wealth when you're constantly making decisions from a place of I deserve this or I need this right now. Wealth is built in the gap between what you could spend and what you actually spend. And you've eliminated that gap entirely. Your money has no space to grow because you've packed your life so full of small purchases that there's no room left for big possibilities. You can't invest because there's nothing left to invest. You can't save for the house because the down payment keeps getting pushed further away by Thai food and Target runs and subscription services you forgot you had. You're not broke because you don't make enough. You're broke because every dollar that comes in already has somewhere to go before it even arrives. Let's talk about what money actually is for a second. Every dollar you have is essentially stored time. You traded hours of your life for those dollars, and then you're trading those dollars for things that are gone before the credit card bill arrives. You're converting your life force into convenience, into comfort, into tiny hits of dopamine that you've convinced yourself you need to function. But here's the real question nobody asks. What if those hours of your life are worth more than the thing you bought? What if the lunch out isn't just $12? What if it's 30 minutes of your life that you've permanently converted into a burrito bowl you ate while scrolling your phone? The wealthy understand this calculation in their bones. Every purchase isn't, can I afford this? It's, what is this actually costing me in freedom? Because $12 sitting in an index fund isn't $12. It's $12 that becomes $30 over 15 years. It's the small piece of your life you get back. It's the day you don't have to work when you're 50. But you're not thinking 15 years ahead. You're thinking about lunch. And that's exactly how the game is designed to keep you playing. Because here's something darker underneath this. You're not accidentally spending $27 a day. The entire economy is engineered to make that spending feel inevitable. Frictionless payment, one-click ordering, subscriptions that auto-renew, apps that remember your card. It's all designed to remove the moment of decision, the pause where you might ask yourself if you actually want this. You were taught to work hard and spend your paycheck. That's the deal. That's the American dream repackaged as monthly cycles. Work, get paid, spend, repeat. Nobody taught you that the real game is keeping what you earn. Nobody showed you that wealth isn't made in your paycheck. It's made in the gap between your paycheck and your spending, and you've been too busy surviving to see the pattern, too busy proving you're doing okay, too busy keeping up with a version of normal that costs $800 a month in small purchases that add up to absolutely nothing except the need to do it again next month. But here's what you need to understand about this cycle you're in. It's not sustainable and it's not neutral. Every year you do this, you're not staying in place. You're falling behind inflation, behind the market, behind the people who figured this out earlier, behind your own potential. Time is the real asset you're spending and you can't get it back. The math is simple even if you don't want to look at it. $27 a day is $810 a month. That's $9,720 a year. Invested in a basic index fund averaging 7%, that's $115,000 in 10 years. That's $278,000 in 20 years. That's the down payment on the house. That's the money that makes money while you sleep. That's the difference between working until you're 65 and having options at 50. But you're choosing the burrito bowl every single day. And you're telling yourself it doesn't matter because it's just today, except it's never just today. It's every day. It's every year. It's your entire financial life compressed into a series of small, comfortable decisions that feel like nothing until you're 45 and realize you've spent $200,000 on things you can't remember. Now, here's the principle that changes everything if you actually internalize it. Money is a test of self-trust, not willpower. You don't have a discipline problem, you have an identity problem. You don't believe you're the kind of person who chooses differently. You don't trust yourself to make the hard choice today because you haven't been making it. So you don't trust future you to follow through on anything that requires sustained effort. This is why budgets fail. Because you're trying to force a behavior change without an identity change. You're trying to become someone who saves while still being someone who spends on comfort, and you can't be both. Not really. One of those identities has to win, and the one that's going to win is the one you feed with your daily decisions. The people who build wealth have rewired their identity. They're not people who save money. They're people who don't need the expensive option. They're not people who sacrifice for the future. They're people who don't find meaning in convenience spending. It's not effort for them anymore. It's just who they are. And you can become that person, but not by trying harder at budgeting, not by downloading another app, not by making promises on January 1st that you'll break by January 19th. You become that person by making one different choice, then making it again tomorrow, then again, until the person who spends $27 a day isn't you anymore. Here's what that looks like in practice. You don't quit everything. You don't go full monk mode and hate your life. You pick one thing, the morning coffee, the lunch out, the subscription you don't use, and you make a different choice. Not because you're depriving yourself, because you're choosing your future self over your present comfort. And you sit with the discomfort of that choice. You feel what it feels like to want something and not get it. You survive that feeling and you realize it's not that bad. Then tomorrow you do it again. And here's what happens that you don't expect. Your identity starts to shift. You start to become someone who can delay gratification, someone who values the gap more than the spending, someone who looks at prices differently. Not can I afford this, but is this aligned with who I'm becoming? And once that shift happens, the money part becomes automatic. Because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're not using discipline to override desire. You've changed the desire. You want the gap more than you want the burrito bowl. But there's another principle layered underneath this one. Every dollar is a soldier, and most people send them to war without orders. Your money right now is just wandering around getting picked off by Starbucks and DoorDash and Amazon. You haven't given it a mission. You haven't told it where to go and what to do. So it does nothing except disappear. Wealthy people treat money like an army. Every dollar has orders. Every dollar has a job. Some dollars are for living. Some dollars are for building. Some dollars are for protecting. And they don't mix them up. The building dollars don't get pulled into living because someone felt stressed on a Tuesday. The protecting dollars don't get spent because there was a sale. Your dollars have no orders, so they get spent on whatever's in front of you. And you wonder why you're not building anything. You can't build with an army that has no strategy. You can't build with money that has no mission. Here's the third principle, and this one's going to sting. Your financial future is being decided by your 11 p.m. decisions, not your morning intentions, not your yearly goals. Your 11 p.m. self, the one who's tired and wants to order food, the one who's scrolling and clicking and buying, the one who just wants comfort after a long day. That version of you is making the real financial decisions. And that version of you doesn't care about your future. Every person you envy made a choice you weren't willing to make. They chose differently at 11 p.m. They felt the same tiredness and discomfort and desire for ease that you feel. But they made the harder choice. They made the choice that their 11 p.m. self hated, but their 11 a.m. self thanked them for. And they did it enough times that it became who they are. You're still being ruled by your 11 p.m. self, the version of you that prioritizes right now over everything else. And until you can get your 11 p.m. self aligned with your future self, nothing changes. The budget doesn't matter. The goals don't matter. The knowledge doesn't matter. Because when it's 11 p.m. and you're tired, your 11 p.m. self is going to win. And your 11 p.m. self wants the $27 comfort hit. So what actually has to happen, you have to make it harder for your 11 p.m. self to make bad decisions. Delete the apps, remove the saved cards, put barriers between impulse and action. Make the easy choice the right choice, because you're not going to think your way out of this. You're going to have to design your way out of it. And here's the uncomfortable truth you already know but keep ignoring. Your lifestyle is someone else's marketing budget working perfectly. Every convenient option, every frictionless purchase, every subscription that auto-renews, it's not designed for your benefit. It's designed to extract maximum money with minimum resistance. And you've been telling yourself you're choosing while companies that spend billions on behavioral psychology have been choosing for you. You're one emergency away from catastrophe because you chose to be, not because you had to be, because you've been spending your margin on comfort instead of protection. You've been trading security for convenience, and you've been telling yourself it's fine because nothing bad has happened yet. But what happens when something does? What happens when the car breaks down, or you lose your job, or someone gets sick? You don't have options. You have credit cards and panic. And you're going to be angry at the universe for bad timing, but the timing isn't the problem. The problem is you spent 3 years choosing burrito bowls over buffer. The people who have savings aren't lucky. They're not making more than you. They made different choices at 11 p.m. They chose boring over exciting. They chose delay over immediate. They chose the gap. And now when something breaks, they don't break with it. You could be that person. You're not less capable. You're not less intelligent. You're just on the wrong side of a pattern that's been running for so long you think it's who you are. But it's not who you are. It's just what you've been doing. 5 years from now, you'll be in one of two places. You'll either wish you'd started today or you'll be glad you did. That's not inspiration. That's just math. That's just time doing what time does. Rewarding consistency and punishing delay. And the distance between those two futures is being decided right now, today, this week, by whether you can make one different choice. So here's where we actually are. You know all this already. You knew it before you started reading. You've known it for months. Maybe years. The information isn't the problem. The problem is you've been waiting for the perfect moment to start, the perfect budget, the perfect system, the perfect version of yourself who has this handled, and that person doesn't exist. That moment isn't coming. You start from wherever you are right now, broke, behind, scared, ashamed, whatever. You start there with one choice that goes against the pattern, $1 that doesn't get spent, one day where you choose differently, and it feels like nothing because it is nothing. One day doesn't change anything. But here's what you're actually doing. You're not changing your financial situation, not yet. You're changing your identity. You're becoming someone who can make the harder choice, someone who values future over present, someone who actually believes they deserve a different outcome enough to act differently. That's the real work, not the budget, not the investment strategy, not the side hustle. The real work is becoming someone who doesn't need to spend $27 a day to feel okay. Someone who can sit with discomfort, someone who trusts themselves enough to delay. And once you become that person, the money part is easy because you're not fighting yourself anymore. So what do you actually want? Not what you say you want. What do you want badly enough to choose differently right now? Because wanting things while continuing the exact pattern that prevents you from having them isn't wanting, it's wishing. And you can't compound wish. The question isn't whether you're capable of change, you are. The question is whether the discomfort of changing is less than the discomfort of staying the same. And only you know that answer. Only you know if you're tired enough of this pattern to actually break it. Nobody's coming to fix this for you. No raise is going to solve it because you'll just expand your lifestyle to match. No inheritance, no lucky break. This gets solved by you making different choices until different choices become who you are. That's it. That's the whole thing. So tomorrow morning, when you're standing in line about to spend $27 on something you won't remember by Thursday, you're going to have a choice. The same choice you've had every day. The same choice that's built the financial reality you're living in right now. The only question is whether you're going to make it differently. Your move?